Good morning. I'm here. Let me light a candle real quick and turn the lights down low, and then we're going to get ready to go. Okay, everybody? Okay? Can you hear me? Yeah, you can. There you go. Give me a fucking second. Good morning, everybody. It's time for the Mr. Keating's Night Show. I'm here with my friend Gregory. He's in my imagination. I've been lighting up incenses every night before these little streams, and now a large pile of ash is collecting on my bedside. Do I leave it there as a record of all the things that I've been doing, of every candle that I've been burning, or do I clean it up and make it look like it was never there in the first place? So many decisions. I've recently begun my endeavor to become the loudest pisser in Pennsylvania. I know I'll never be the loudest pisser in Maryland, but I've been training my abs every single day so I can push as hard as I can. I want to piss like a jet engine, just psh, right in the bowl. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your day. Are you enjoying getting back to work, getting back to school? Getting back to your baby boo? Getting back to eating food? I don't know what you're doing on this Monday morning, but Jesus Christ, if you're not reading a bedtime story with your teddy bear tucked up with a warm glass of milk, what the fuck are you doing right now? Now I know what you're going to say. Why are you cursing in the first 5 minutes of your video? Isn't that going to get your channel demonetized? Isn't that going to get your... YouTube can't touch me. The last time YouTube tried to touch me, they tried to strike me on a video I made 3 years ago that you couldn't even hear because the audio quality was so terrible, and they haven't touched me since. Those fuckers will never get my lucky charms. I'll never let them touch my lucky charms, bitch. I hope you all are having a good day. The last time we were here, we read a little short story. I might do that again. I like reading short stories. It's quite nice. But I'll tell you what else is quite nice. I'm drinking a glass of water, but I didn't have a good cup, so I'm drinking it out of a jar that used to hold Italian wedding soup. Oh boy, it was pretty okay, the soup. The water is better, though. It had these little meatballs in it. Oh boy, I like me some meatballs, but these ones were just okay, I gotta be honest with you. I've had some good meatballs, and I've had some bad meatballs in my time. I don't know what y'all know about good meatballs or bad meatballs. Where's the fucking... Someone asked me to put this back up last time. I have a donation widget. No, it doesn't. I clean the soup out. Get out of here, Saw AV Club. What are you doing here? It's past your bedtime. You're supposed to be drinking your milk and going to bed. What the fuck are you doing here? Someone asked me to put this back up. I have the chat going on the right side, but I was supposed to have my donation widget up, just so that if you want to ruin the immersion, a loud screaming noise will play. But I seem to have forgotten how to do that. Jeez, did they just get rid of it? I'm looking through my widgets. I guess it's not that important right now, if I'm being honest. What's a game widget? Lets your viewers play games in the chat? That's kind of fun. I do like that idea, letting people play tic-tac-toe. But I'm gonna be honest with you, we're not up for that right now. We're not up for some tic-tac-toe. Where's my paint? I forgot. I'm supposed to have my little screen up. There you go. This isn't the Matrix. This is America. Okay. I'll give myself cool sunglasses tonight because I'm eating lasagna. Where is that? I am immortal in the eyes of YouTube. They can never take me away. I'm too important to the economy of their site. If they were to lose me, do you know how many viewers that they would lose? Do you know how many subscribers I command? 520 or something. If YouTube loses that, it's over for them. And they know that. And I know that. That's why I can get whatever contract I want. That's why I take all their money. In fact, I'm going to put all the money there. I'm going to put all the gold coins that YouTube gives me. Am I in the right place? I would like you. No, I can't reach down there. This is my YouTube money. Susan's retiring because I asked her to. This is my money. I won a game of bridge with God. I used to watch my parents play bridge sometimes. They were pretty okay at it. It's supposed to be the other way around. These don't look like gold coins. I don't know what these look like. These look like truffula trees that got chopped down by the Onceler. We're not going to talk about the Onceler anymore because we already had a whole episode about him a couple days ago. So we're just going to pretend that these all look like gold coins. Okay, I'm drawing with a mouse here. And I'm working under pressure because I don't actually own this money. I'm indebted to it. Shut up, I don't do it for the money. There it is. Fuck the money. I'm gonna do that. There we go. Now we're gonna look for a little short story. Just a little bedtime bunker to get you all acclimated to the Thursday evening air. It's 60 degrees outside. No, it's not. What the? Where is it? It's 40 degrees outside-ish, kinda. Here, I'll look on the website that I used yesterday that spells their B's like D's and does their U's like W's. Or I couldn't even read half, or their I's like L's, and I couldn't even read half of these words. Let's see, which one has the funniest title? The Last Dream of Old Oak, Two Friends, A True Story repeated word for word as I heard it, Pigs is Pigs, Girl, The Alchemist, The Olive, A Hunger Artist, Miggles, The Tomb, The Wind's Tale, The Girl Who Got Rattled, The Ransom of Red Chief extracts from Adam's diary Goose berries, his wife's deceased sister, the egg. Mademoiselle Fifi. It's Mademoiselle, it's just the L's and the I's look all the same. Mademoiselle Fifi, the namesake. Jimmy Scarecrow's Christmas. Blue Jay Yarn. The Man in the Moon. I already said that one. Holiday Task. The Cats of Ultar. The Little Match Girl. Mark Twain, a child's biography. A Chameleon. On the Day of the Crucifixion. These are all the names of the short stories that I'm looking at right now. I don't know which one I'll be picking. None of these, though. Shut up, no one else. You're getting banned from the chat for that. No criticism is allowed. That's what you get. Oh no, The Alchemist by H.P. Lovecraft. Well, I didn't know it was written by him when I picked this, but I guess we're gonna read it now. Boy, I've heard funny stories about H.P. Lovecraft, but I guess we're gonna figure out if any of them are true. Here we go. High up, crowning the grassy summit of the swelling mount, whose sides are wooded near the base, with the gnarled trees of the primeval forest, stands the old chateau of my ancestors. For centuries, its lofty battlements have frowned down upon the world in the rugged countryside, serving as a home and a stronghold for the proud house of those whose honored line is older even than the moss-grown castle walls. These ancient turrets, stained by the storms of generations and crumbling under the slow yet mighty pressure of time, formed in the ages of feudalism one of the most dreaded and formidable fortresses in all of France. From its mess-located parchments and mounted battlements, barons, counts, and even kings have been defied, yet never had its spacious halls resounded to footsteps of invaders. But since those glorious years, all is changed. A poverty but little above all level of dire want, together with the pride of a name that all but forbids its alleviation by the pursuits of commercial life. They and those have prevented the scions of our line from maintaining their estates in pristine splendor, and the falling stones of the walls, the overgrown vegetation in the parks, the dry and dusty moat, and the ill-paved courtyards, the toppling towers went without, as well as the sagging floors, the worm-eaten wall-knots, and the faded tapestries within. They all tell a gloomy tale of fallen grandeur. As the ages passed, first one, then another of the four great turrets were left to ruin, until at last but a single tower housed the sadly reduced descendants of the once mighty lords of the estate. I think I'll be putting this image. They have a good picture here. I'll put it up. so that you can get an image of this. I think it'll really help the visual side of the story. Here you are. I'll put it right next to you so that you can see it. No, I want that out a little longer. Come on, stretch out. There we are. Now let us continue on. It was once in the vast and gloomy chambers of this one remaining tower that I, Antoine, the last of the unhappy and accursed Counts de C, first saw the light of day 90 long years ago, within these walls and amongst the dark and shadowy forest, the wild ravines and grottos of the hillside below, were spent the first years of my troubled life. My parents I never knew. My father had been killed at the age of 32, a month before I was born, by the fall of a stone somehow dislodged from one of the deserted parapets of the castle. And my mother having died at my birth, my care and education devolved solely under the one remaining survivor, an old and trusted man of considerable intelligence, whose name I remember as Pierre. I was an only child, and the lack of companionship which this fact entailed upon me was augmented by the strange care exercised by my aged guardian, in excluding me from the society of the peasant children whose abodes were scattered here and there about the plains that surround the base of the hill. At the time, Pierre said that this restriction was imposed upon me because my noble birth placed me above association with such plebeian company. Now I know that its real object was to keep from my ears the idle tales of the dreaded curse upon our line, that were nightly told and magnified by simple tenantry, as they conversed in hushed accents in the glow of their cottage hearts. Thus isolated and thrown upon my own resources, I spent hours of my childhood in poring over the ancient tomes that filled the shadows haunted library of the chateau, and in roaming without aim or purpose through the perpetual dust of this spectral wood that clothes the side of the hill near its foot. It was perhaps an effect of each surrounding that my mind early acquired a shade of melancholy. Those studies and pursuits which partake of the dark and occult in nature most strongly calmed my attention. Of my own race I was permitted to learn singularly little, yet what small knowledge of it I was able to gain seemed to depress me so. Perhaps it was at first only the manifest reluctance of my old preceptor to discuss with me my paternal ancestry that gave rise to the terror which I felt at the mention of my great house. Yet as I grew out of childhood, I was able to piece together disconnected fragments of discourse, let slip from the unwilling tongues of those which would begin to falter in mention of my great house. They all had a sort of relation to a certain circumstance which I had always deemed strange, but which now became dimly terrible. The circumstance to which I'm alluding is the early age at which all counts of my line had met their end, a young death. Whilst I had hitherto considered this but a natural attribute of a family of short-lived men, I afterward pondered long upon these premature deaths, and I began to connect them to the wanderings of the old men who often spoke of a curse which for centuries had prevented the lives of the holders of my title from much exceeding the age of 32. Upon my 21st birthday, the aged Pierre gave me a family document which he had said he held for many generations and had been handed down from father to son. It was continued by each possessor. Its contents were of the most startling nature, and its perusal confirmed the gravest of my apprehensions. At this time, My belief in the supernatural was firm and deep-seated, else I should have dismissed with scorn the incredible narrative that would unfold. The paper carried me back to the days of the 13th century. When the old castle in which I had sat had been a feared and impregnable fortress. It told of a certain ancient man who had once dwelt in our estates, a person of no small accomplishments, though little above the rank of a peasant, by the name of Michael, usually designated by the surname of Movils. Movils? Yes, of Movils, the evil, on account of his sinister reputation. He had studied beyond the custom of his kind, seeking things such as the Philosopher's Stone or the elixir of eternal life, and was reputed wise in the terrible secrets of black magic and alchemy. Michael Movils had one son named Charles, a youth as proficient as himself in the hidden arts, who had therefore been known as the sorcerer or the wizard. This pair, shunned by all honest folk, were suspected of the most hideous practices. Old Michael was said to have burnt his wife alive as a sacrifice to the devil, and the unaccountable disappearance of many small peasant children was laid at the dreaded door of these two. Yet through the dark natures of their father and son ran one remedying ray of humanity. This evil old man loved his offspring with fierce intensity, while the youth had for his parent a more filial affection. One night, the castle on the hill was thrown into the wildest confusion by the vanishment of young Godfrey, son to Henry, the Count. A search party, headed by the frantic father, invaded cottage of the sorcerers, and there they came upon old Movils, busy over a huge and violently boiling cauldron. Without certain cause, in the ungoverned madness of fury and despair, the Count laid his hands on the aged wizard, and here he realized his murderous hold. His victim was no more. Meanwhile, joyful servants were proclaiming the finding of young Godfrey in a distant and unused chamber of the great edifice, telling too late that poor Michael had been killed in vain. As the Count and his associates turned away from the lowly abode of the alchemist, the forms of Charles the sorcerer appeared through the trees. The excited chatter of the menials stood, standing about, told him what had occurred, and yet he seemed at first unmoved at his father's fate. Then, slowly advancing to meet the Count, he pronounced in dull yet terrible accents the curse that ever afterward haunted the House of C. May ne'er a noble of thy murderous line survive to reach a greater age than thine, spoke he, when, suddenly leaping backwards into the black woods, he drew from his tunic a flail of colorless liquid in which he threw in the face of his father's slayer as he disappeared behind the inky curtain of night. The Count died without utterance and was buried the next day, but little more than 32 years from the hour of his birth. No trace of the assassin could be found, though relentless bands of peasants scoured the neighboring woods and the meadowland around the hill. Thus, time and the want of a reminder dulled the memory of the curse in the minds of the late Count's family, so that when Godfrey, innocent cause of the whole tragedy and now bearing the title, was killed by an arrow while hunting at the age of 32, there were no thoughts save those of grief at his demise. But when years afterwards the next young count, Robert by name, was found dead in a nearby field of no apparent cause, the peasants told in whispers that their seigneur had but lately passed his 32nd birthday, when surprised by early death. Louis, the son to Robert, was found drowned in the moat at the same fateful age, and thus, down through the centuries ran this ominous chronicle. Henry's, Robert's, Antoine's, and Armand's snatched from happy and virtuous lives when little below the age of their unfortunate ancestor. At that, I had left at most but 11 years of further existence. This was made certain to me by the words which I had read. My life, previously held its small value, now became dearer to me each day, as I delved deeper and deeper into the mysteries of the hidden world of black magic. isolated as I was, science had produced no impression upon me. I labored as in the Middle Ages, as rapt as I had been as old Michael and old Charles, just as they had in their acquisition of demonological and alchemic learning. Yet, read as I might, in no manner could I account for the strange curse upon my line. In unusually rational moments, I would even go so far as to seek natural explanation, attributing the early deaths of my ancestors to the sinister Charles the Sorcerer and his heirs, yet having found upon careful inquiry that there were no known descendants of this alchemist, I would fall back to the occult studies and once more endeavor to find a spell that would release my house from its burden. Upon one thing I was absolutely resolved. I should never wed, since no other branch of my family was in existence. I might thus end the curse with myself. As I drew near the age of 30, old Pierre was called to the land beyond, and alone I buried him beneath the stones of the courtyard to which he had loved him to wander all of his life. Thus was I left to ponder on myself, as the only human creature within this great fortress. In my utter solitude, my mind began to cease its vain protest against the impending doom, to become almost reconciled to the fate which so many of my ancestors had met. Much of my time was now occupied in the exploration of the ruined and abandoned halls, the towers of the chateau, which in youth fear had caused me to shun, some of which old Pierre had once told me had not been trodden by human foot for 4 centuries. Strange and awesome were many of the objects I encountered, furniture covered by dust of the ages, with the rot of long dampness. Cobwebs in a profusion I had never seen before were spun everywhere. Huge bats flapped their bony and uncanny wings on all sides of the otherwise untenanted room. Of my exact age, even down to days and hours, I kept a most careful record, for each movement of the pendulum of the massive clock in the library told off so much of my doomed existence. At length, I approached that time which I had so long viewed with apprehension. Since most of my ancestors had been seized some little while before they reached the exact age of Count Henry at his end, I was every moment on the watch for the coming of the unknown death. In what strange form would this curse overtake me, I knew not. But I was resolved at least that it should not find me in a cowardly or a passive victim. With new vigor, I applied myself to examination of the old chateau. I was upon one of the longest of all of my excursions of discovery in the deserted portion of the castle, less than a week before the fatal hour which I felt must mark the utmost limit of my stay on the earth. Beyond this, I could not have even the slightest hope of continuing to draw breath. I had spent the better part of the morning in climbing up and down half-ruined staircases in one of the most dilapidated and ancient turrets. As the afternoon progressed, I sought the lower levels, descending into what appeared to be either a medieval palace of confinement, or more recently, an excavated storehouse for gunpowder. As I slowly traversed the niter-encrusted passageway, at the foot of the last staircase, the paving became very damp. As soon as I saw this, by the light of my flickering torch, that a blank, water-stained wall impeded my journey, I turned to retrace my steps. Then my eye fell upon a small trapdoor with a ring, which lay beneath my foot. Pausing, I succeeded with difficulty in raising it, whereupon revealed there was a black aperture, exhaling nauseous fumes which caused my torch to sputter, and disclosing in the unsteady glare the top of a flight of stone steps. As soon as the torch which I had lowered into the repellent depths burned freely and steadily, I commenced my descent. The steps were many, and led to a narrow stone-flagged passage which I knew must be far underground. This passage proved great length and terminated in a massive oaken door, dripping with the moisture of the place, and stoutly resisting all my attempts to open it. Ceasing after a time my efforts in this direction, I proceeded back some distance towards the steps when there suddenly fell to my experience one of the most profound and maddening shocks capable of reception by a human. Without warning, I heard the heavy door creak behind me slowly, opening upon its rusted hinges. My immediate sensations were incapable of analysis. To be confronted in a place as thoroughly deserted as this old castle with evidence of the presence of man or spirit, produced in my brain a horror of the most acute description. When at last I turned and faced the seat of the ground, my eyes must have started from their orbits at the sight that they beheld. There in the ancient Gothic doorway stood a human figure. It was that of a man clad in a skull hat and a long medieval tunic of dark color. His long hair and flowing beard were that of a terrible and intense black hue, and of incredible profusion. His forehead high beyond the usual dimensions, his cheek deep sunken and heavily lined with wrinkles. His hands long and claw-like, gnarled, were of such deadly marble-like whiteness that I have never seen anywhere else in man. His figure, lean to the proportions of a skeleton, was strangely bent and almost lost within the voluminous folds of his garment. But strangest of all were his eyes, twin caves of blackness, profound in expression of understanding, yet inhuman in degree of wickedness. They were fixed on me, piercing my soul with hatred. At last the figure spoke in a rumbling voice that chilled me through with its dull hollowness and latent malevolence. The language in which the discourse was clothed was that debased form of Latin in use amongst the more learned men of the Middle Ages. The apparition spoke of the curse which had hovered over my house, told me of my coming end, dwelt upon the wrong perpetrated by my ancestors against old Michael Marvels, and he gloated over the revenge of Charles the Sorcerer. He told how young Charles had escaped in the night, returning in after years to kill Godfrey the heir with an arrow, just as he approached the age which his father had been at assassination. How he had secretly returned to the estate, established himself in the even then deserted subterranean chamber whose doorway now framed the hideous narrator. How he had seized Robert in a field, forced poison down his throat, and left him to die at age 32. At this point I was left to imagine the solution of the greatest mystery of all, how the curse had been fulfilled since the time that Charles the Sorcerer must, in the course of nature, died. For the man digressed into an account of a deep alchemic study of two wizards, father and son, concerning the elixir which should grant him, to who partook of it, eternal life and eternal youth. His enthusiasm seemed for the moment to remove from his terrible eyes the malevolence that had first so haunted me. But suddenly the flesh-shit glare returned, and with a shocking sound like a hissing serpent, the stranger raised a glass flail with the evidence, intent on killing me, as had Charles the Sorcerer 600 years before, and in that of my ancestor. Prompted by some preserving instinct of self-defense, I broke through the spell that had hitherto held me unmoved, and flung my now dying torch at the creature who menaced my existence. I heard the flail break harmlessly against the stones of the passage as the tunic of the strange man caught fire and lit the horrid scene with a ghastly radiance. The shriek of fright by the would-be assassin proved too much for my already shaken nerves, and I fell prone upon the slimy floor in a total faint. When all my senses returned, it was frightfully dark, and my mind, remembering what had occurred, shrank from the idea of beholding any more. Yet, out of curiosity, I asked, who? Was this man of evil? And how did he come within the castle walls? Why should he seek to avenge the death of Michael Marvels, and how bad the curse must have been carried through all the long centuries? The dread of years was lifted from my shoulder, for I knew that he whom I had felled was the source of all my danger. Now I was free. I burned with a desire to learn more of the sinister thing that had haunted my life, my line, for centuries, and made of my own youth one long, continued nightmare. Determined upon further exploration, I fell in my pockets for the flint and steel, and lit the unused torch which I had with me. First of all, new light revealed the disordered and blackened form of the mysterious stranger. The hideous eyes were now closed. Disliking this sight, I turned away and entered the chamber beyond the Gothic door. Here, I found what seemed like an alchemist's laboratory. In one corner was an immense pile of shining metal that sparkled gorgeously. It might have been gold, but I didn't pause to examine it, for I was strangely affected by that which I had undergone. At the farther end of the apartment was the opening, leading to one of the many wild ravines on the dark hillside forest. Filled with wonder, yet now realizing how the man had obtained access to the chateau, I proceeded to return. I had intended to pass by the remains of the stranger with averted face, but as I approached his body, I heard it, emanating from it a faint sound, as though life were not wholly extinct. Aghast, I turned to examine the charred and shriveled figure on the floor. Then, all at once, those horrible eyes, blacker even then than the seared face in which they were set, opened wide with an expression. The cracked lips tried to form words which I could not well understand. Once I caught the name of Charles the Sorcerer, and again I fancied the words years and curse issued from that twisted mouth. Still, I was at a loss to gather the purpose of his discontented speech. At my evident ignorance of his meaning, the pitchy eyes once more flashed malevolently, until, helpless as I saw my opponent to be, I trembled as I watched him. Suddenly, the wretch, animated with his last burst of strength, raised his piteous head from the damp and sunken pavement, and then, as I remained paralyzed with fear, he found his voice in the dying breath and screamed forth those words which have ever afterward haunted my days and nights. Fool, can you not guess my secret? Have you no brain whereby you may recognize the will which has through 6 long centuries fulfilled the dreaded curse upon your house? Have I not told you of the great elixir of life? Know you not the secret of how alchemy was solved? It's I have lived for 600 years to maintain my revenge. I am Charles. I am Charles. I am the sorcerer. What a weird story. That's the end, everybody. What did you guys think of that? A lot of petulance and existentialism in that. I don't know how to play basketball. We're not playing basketball. I'm reading a short story. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Basketball. Well, don't worry. There's nothing else to say. We had fun tonight, didn't we? Reading little stories. I do enjoy reading these. They're quite fun. Tomorrow, maybe I'll either read... Which one was it? The Laughing Hippo or Pigs is Pigs. I don't know which one I'm going to do yet, but we'll do one of those ones. So please enjoy yourself, whether you tune in live or come back later. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Good night.